So Donald Trump announced this plan to have a $100,000 charge for every H-1B visa that's issued to a foreign worker. These are generally given to folks in the tech space. This puts him in the crosshairs of folks like his former advisor, Elon Musk, and a lot of the folks in Silicon Valley that supported him. I'm going to give you my thoughts as the Nomad Capitalist and what I think about this new fee on H-1B. And so if Trump's goal is to make America great again, I think this is a step in the wrong direction. I'm not here to talk to H-1B visa holders or potential H-1B visa holders. I'm here to talk to essentially U.S. citizens about what impact this is going to have on your country and your passport and what I think you need to know going forward. Because what we're already seeing is China and U.S. allies alike are looking to poach the people that the United States no longer wants. Now, if it's your first time here, I'm Andrew Henderson. I'm the founder of Nomad Capitalist. We help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs legally go where you're treated best, lowering your taxes, getting a second passport, protecting your assets overseas, because there's a whole lot of countries out there that all want your business. You can go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, and we'll show you how we can help you take advantage of that. But the same thing is going to apply to H-1Bs. These people are in demand, and sure, they may want to come to the United States, but I'm going to share with you my experiences of living overseas for a long time and tell you how I think this is going to negatively impact the United States. I'm not here to talk about the mental health of people who have an H-1B and how tough life is. I, quite frankly, have been telling you for years this is how the United States acts. It puts people in limbo. It screws people around. This is what it's done. This is nothing new. It just happens to be that today it's H-1B visa holders who are freaking out. And my LinkedIn feed has been full of people in the immigration business talking about how unfair it is. But here's what you need to know as a U.S. citizen. So Trump issued a proclamation saying there's going to be a one-time $100,000 fee for new H-1B visa petitions filed after September 21st. This will apply to first-time H-1B entries, not renewals or existing visa holders. The stated goal is to get away from a lottery system and prioritize higher paid, higher skilled hires. And of course, legal challenges and requests for exemptions are expected. Here's the one thing that stood out to me in this news is why does the U.S. always have confusion when it rolls out new rules? I mean, the U.S. is such a bumbling bureaucracy compared to most of the world. I'm not saying no other country has this, but it seems to be very much the case in the U.S. There's always confusion. You know, what I love about living overseas is the countries where I have citizenship in, or the countries where I bank, or the countries where I live. Their tax codes, their immigration codes, their everything is generally much, much shorter. And it just gets to the point. And therefore, it's pretty clear what you need to do. It's pretty clear what you can do and what you can't do. The U.S., the U.S. code, you could fill this room with paper of the U.S. code. It is such a bureaucracy. And so that created everybody freaking out, people who thought maybe they wouldn't be let back into the country. You know, that's going to leave an impact on people. Again, not here to talk about mental health of people, but if you have an H-1B and you're on vacation overseas and you're not sure if you can come back to do your job or not, you know, that's going to shock your nervous system in a way that's going to stay with you. And people make decisions based on how they feel. And if they feel bad living in the U.S., they're going to leave. When I lived in the U.S., I knew a number of folks who were there in the financial world and in the IT world, many of whom did not feel comfortable living there. One of them ended up moving to Australia. They were recently naturalized there. I think there's better places to move than Australia because we're helping a lot of Australians leave there as well. But they just felt the U.S. was a very difficult place to live. And so when high-tax bureaucratic countries like Australia are beating you, you've got a problem. But here are my thoughts in a nutshell on the rest of it. This H-1B visa hike, might not boost demand for U.S. workers if the companies just offshore the jobs. You know, I still don't entirely understand why everybody has to be in the same room doing the job. What we've seen with some of these companies is they're increasingly just opening up bigger offices overseas. Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple, he spoke at Nomad Capitalist Live recently, and he said that he's a big advocate of hiring people all around the world, and that he wished Apple did more of that. And he and I found a lot of common ground on that issue. You're seeing these tech companies increasingly saying, okay, we're hiring a lot of folks from India. They're the biggest recipients of H-1Bs. Let's go to Bangalore and let's just increase our presence there. we're not going to hire more U.S. workers. We'll just build a bigger, more connected campus in Bangalore or somewhere else in India, or perhaps what we'll see as a trend of companies getting people to come to Dubai, for example, or some new emirate in the UAE or somewhere else in the Gulf, where getting people employment visas is a joke. I mean, I recently got a UAE residence permit issued. It took a matter of hours. Meanwhile, there's U.S. immigration permits, not for H1-B, but for other stuff that they're literally were filed in the year 2000. 25 years later, they're getting to it. Why would companies just not start looking at, hey, we can pay people less, maybe not a lot less, because in demand is in demand, but we can pay people less in their own country, like India, or we can have them move to the UAE, where they're a lot closer to home and the taxes are a hell of a lot better. And by the way, therefore, we can probably pay them less because in their pocket, they'll have more money. I'm not sure this is going to have the result of boosting a U.S. workforce that Trump wants. The reality is, just as capital goes where it's treated best, jobs go where they're treated best. And the U.S. has done a pretty bad job of educating people, especially in STEM. And now they don't have the workforce that they need. I'm not saying there's no Americans who could do these jobs. I'm not saying there aren't some companies who are taking advantage. That's not my concern. I'm just here to tell you, if you're a U.S. citizen, this is probably not going to have the benefit to your economy that you think it is, because what I've seen is plenty of people from these countries would actually be very happy, more now than in the past, to live in their country. Let's take China, for example. I first went to China 16 or 17 years ago, and there was a much greater interest in leaving China. The trend in, let's say, the last 5 years that I've really seen is a much greater patriotism among Chinese. They want to stay in their country if they have a good job. They really would rather not live in the West in many cases. Now, they're big purveyors of golden visas and residence permits and bank accounts in other countries because they believe in what Nomad Capitalist talks about. They don't necessarily trust their country, but they are more patriotic and they are more willing to stay in it than they have in the past. And I've been reading more about, in India, the same kind of movement. People who are very highly skilled can get great jobs in India. They can live close to their families. Maybe they feel more comfortable there. Why move to San Francisco, where people are getting robbed and people are pooping in the streets? Why? When you can simply live in a place that you're more familiar with. Or, again, I think we'll see more migration, nearby South Asian, tech hubs to the Gulf, where companies and workers alike can benefit from a low-tax environment where it's very easy to get a residence permit. So, this is another example of the U.S., and I think most of the Western countries are like this. They're not looking themselves in the mirror and saying, we created this problem to where we need to bring in more talented people from overseas who no longer really have the great need to come here anymore because there's so many places that they can live. And, if you're making good money, you can live better now in India or China than you could 20 years ago. Okay, maybe they want a good citizenship. Indian passport's not a great travel document. Living in the Gulf, it's generally not going to solve that because you don't get citizenship in those countries. Other places in the world are opening up. Canada, right next door to the U.S., is aggressively positioning itself as a safe harbor for tech workers. They want people to come in. They've attracted about 32,000 tech workers in a one-year period, about half of those from India, so they are open. Obviously, lots of Indians in a number of cities in Canada. The UK is scaling up its global talent program and exploring visa fee cuts. Visas were up 76% in a recent period. Singapore not only has its tech pass, if you earn about $200,000 a year, there's a way for you to move there. They've also increased what they call their One Pass, which is not just for tech talent, but other kinds of talent as well. And so Singapore has a number of pathways to move there. Again, difficult to get citizenship, but closer to home if you're from South Asia, much similar culture. Malaysia next door also has its talent pass. You need a much lower salary to qualify. Malaysia has a Malaysian Indian community. And so if you're from India, which again, one of the H1-B workers are, you can fit in there. Now, I understand you're going to say, oh, in Malaysia, your salary is not going to be as high. And that is true. I have known folks who've lived in Malaysia and made six-figure salaries. And eventually they move to Australia, the US, and they make a bit more. They also pay more taxes. It also costs more to live there. So what I believe is, in an increasingly multipolar world, the pie is going to be cut a lot more thin, a lot more slices of pie, where the U.S. had this very large dominant position with H1-B. Now you're going to see a little slice go to Singapore, a smaller slice go to Malaysia. Maybe you'll see more recruitment in the Gulf states as companies move there. A decent slice are just going to choose to stay in their own country. China's launching a new K visa for STEM workers. They're basically piggybacking right on the news of H1-B. It's a new visa category that is targeted at science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields. There are basically going to be fewer restrictions than other Chinese residence permits. Applicants don't need a Chinese employer to sponsor them or provide an invitation letter. So it's much easier than other work visas. China is basically saying, hey, we'll pick up the slack. Is everyone going to start moving to China? No, but they're going to take their own little slice. And so you can see everyone's going to kind of step in and take their little slice. This is the ongoing trend that we're seeing, everything from, for example, U.S. dollar dominance. It was in the 70s as a percentage of the world reserve currency at the turn of the century. Now it's in the mid to low 50s. And so you're seeing all the different numbers the U.S. is losing at the margins, whether it's dollar dominance, whether it's immigration dominance. I mean, for the first time this year, U.S. population is going to shrink. And so the answer shouldn't be, let's keep people out, let's charge higher fees, let's make it more difficult to immigrate here. And so what I'm seeing in the U.S., in the U.K., in a number of Western countries is this nationalism that comes from, I think, misplaced pride of, if they don't want to pay $100,000, screw them, we don't need them. I think you do need them, quite frankly. I'm not saying every H1-B visa is needed, but I'm saying in general, people not coming to your country as high-paid workers, or the tourism numbers are down. I mean, Disney World they called it a ghost town this summer. Why? In part, foreign tourism is down. So if you want to keep everybody out, you're not going to win. You know, the difference between Make America Great Again today and when Reagan said it running for president in 1980 is, back then there weren't that many choices. There was no Dubai. I mean, Dubai in 1980 had camels on the airport runway. No joke. Singapore was nothing like what it is today. It was still kind of a backwater in 1980. All the places that we talk about. Now, where I move as an entrepreneur who can work from anywhere, you know, I've got a home in Bogota and in Kuala Lumpur. You may not want jobs in these places. You may not make as much money with a job in those places. But look at where they were in 1980. You wouldn't move there in 1980 when Ronald, that's why Ronald Reagan could say, let's make America great again. But the same is not true today. People have Singapore. By the way, South Korea is pushing a K talent pass also. So you've got Singapore, South Korea, the UAE, China, Germany's even doing something, the UK, Canada, all these countries are competitors. You're also seeing people do more freelance stuff where they can move anywhere. So, IT as, hey, I'll just go and work for myself and sell my services somewhere and get a digital nomad visa. And I'll live somewhere in Southern Europe that's cheaper, or I'll live in Latin America, or I'll live in Southeast Asia and pay very low taxes. The pie is going to get cut up a lot more thin. What's also interesting is about 3/4 of folks who leave the U.S. don't come back. And so once they're gone, they're gone. The reputation is out there. And I think you're going to see fewer and fewer talented people want to come to the U.S. Again, you're seeing that in tourism. The reputation of the country, which obviously has a very big place on the global stage, is telling foreigners you're not welcome. And I know what a lot of people are going to say to that. Good riddance, we don't need you. When I left the U.S. and when I gave up my U.S. citizenship, good riddance, we don't need you. Hey, listen, you don't need me in particular, but I can tell you how many people come up to me all around the world. Some of them renounced U.S. citizenship. Many of them left the United States. How many tax dollars is the United States not getting just because of little old me, and then extrapolate it across everything else that's happening? As my father once taught me, economies rise and fall at the margins. When you went from 69 to 63% homeownership, something like that, during the GFC, look at what happened. Housing crashed. People think that, unemployment's 80%. That's what it takes to crash an economy. No, it happens at the margins. It happens when a small percentage of highly paid people go somewhere else and take their innovation somewhere else, and you lose out. That's why China, in many areas, is beating the U.S. in all the innovations, from AI to flying cars to everything else. They may not be winning at everything, But if you're just sitting in the U.S. saying, oh, that China, they don't know what they're doing, China's innovating to such a higher level in many areas. And the Western world is sitting back and acting as if it's 1980, and the Chinese are riding their little bicycles around, and everybody else is in their village, and there's camels on the runway in Dubai, and that attitude is going to cause people to go somewhere else. And here's the reality. Those people don't share your rose-eyed optimism for your country. They just want to go where they're treated best. They just want to go where they have the best experience. And if you don't want them, that's fine. They know there's somewhere that will. They've wanted to go to the U.S., but what I've told you for years is I travel around the world. I don't meet that many people who are super eager to go to the U.S. In fact, many of them said, I don't want to live there. My country's better. I understand the culture. I can make more money here. I've just got a nice car. I'm buying a nice apartment. That's what more and more people are saying because their countries are increasingly livable. And you know what? Yeah, if they have to make a little bit less money, they're happy to do that because they're comfortable. And the fact that the U.S. is making it harder is not going to benefit the economy. It's going to create a reputation where Americans are not going to be welcome to live and invest in certain places. Yes, a lot of places will still welcome them. You'll still be able to travel to a lot of places with your passport. But from what we talk about here, you want to open a bank account? You want to get a residence permit? We're already seeing some countries saying, you know what? No, we don't want the Americans. And I think part of it is geopolitically motivated in the global south. We had a banker in Malaysia come to Nomad Capitalist Live. Yeah, we don't really want Americans. Yeah, it's FATCA, but we're also just kind of tired of the U.S. We don't want that influence in our bank. We have customers from all over Asia. They bring plenty of wealth. Why do we want the geopolitical difficulty of opening accounts for Americans? So that's the impact this is having. You're going to have fewer and fewer freedoms and opportunities at the margins holding a U.S. passport. This is why I think everyone needs a second passport, because especially if you're from a big country on the world stage like the U.S. or the U.K. or any of the other English-speaking countries, the world is scrutinizing you. And when they don't like what you're doing, they're going to offer fewer opportunities. The stuff that we talk about is diversifying. Bank accounts, trusts, foreign companies, second passports. It's going to be harder and harder as an American at the margins. Get a second passport. Start diversifying as much as you can now to be grandfathered in. And quite frankly, I continue to believe that U.S. citizenship, for many reasons, not just tax, is going to be a burden. I gave up mine to dissociate myself with all this stuff because I want to be welcome around the rest of the world. And I don't think this is going to make the United States a better place to live. I just think it's going to drive more people to say, I no longer need to live in the United States.